All right, so welcome to another episode of Office Hours. My name is Art Brown. We're happy to have an esteemed colleague here, Shonna Dorsey, today. Shonna, the scope of our podcast is to explore IT in the state of Nebraska, specifically in our four-county region for MCC.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So Shonna, tell us a little bit about your background in IT and what got you to where you are today.
Sure. First of all, I want to say that you called me an esteemed colleague. That's really a nice accolade from you. I appreciate that.
No, it's serious. Yep. Legitimate. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
go
thank
ahead.
you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I consider myself more tech adjacent.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I've just been hanging out around really smart people for decades.
Okay.
That's
cool.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I started in IT type of training back when I was a student at Omaha North High School. So.
Okay.
Even back in the 90s, they had a great program. Like I remember students studying graphic design back then, didn't really know that that's what they were doing. But
Right.
anyway, started off at Omaha North and have just always been around technology. And then when I got into college, I started off as, I want to say pre-med or some biology degree, because at that time, that was the only way that I knew or heard that you can make a good living.
Right, okay.
So anyway, ultimately wasn't a great studier and just didn't have that grit at the time that it takes, and resilience and all of this stuff to really get into like, biochem and all these really complicated topics.
Okay.
And so I switched to computer science and then ultimately ended up in management information systems.
Gotcha.
Because, I like the business side of tech, but I knew that I'm kind of skipping a bunch of stuff, but I knew that while I was like, I enjoy IT, will I ever become a programmer? Probably not.
Right.
But I understand the power of it, and I want to be a part of it. So
Right.
that's kind of how it all started. And then I've had jobs as a help desk intern. I worked as a business analyst, project manager,
Okay.
and then started a code school back in 2014. And I think basically I've been just doing project management for a really long time, but
Right,
just
right.
in different businesses and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and now I'm at
Okay.
the Nebraska Tech Collaborative, or at Exarban Foundation,
Yeah.
running the Nebraska Tech Collaborative and Intern Nebraska.
Gotcha. So let's pause a minute. So
Yeah.
I think our paths first crossed when you were doing your startup business.
Yeah.
So let's tell us a little bit more about that if you can. So.
Yeah. How do I even get into that? I was working as a consultant for a small agency at the time, and the job was fine. I was doing like SharePoint consulting, so it was fine. But I was approached by this venture capitalist in town, Mark Hatesbrook. He runs Dundee Venture Capital, and he and one of his colleagues were like, "Hey, we're thinking of starting up a code school," and I was like, "What is that?" And we talked about it, and at the time, this was back in like late 2013. I was like, I don't think Nebraska is ready for this because we're pretty much traditional when it comes to training and education, and also like companies at the time were definitely more of the 4-year degree.
Right.
Have a 4-year degree, then get into tech and
Right.
start your career. So I just didn't really get how it could work,
Right.
but worked with that team for a little bit and got my head around it, decided to quit my job, which was super scary, but ultimately went in as a quarter owner of the company and ran it for 3 years. So
Gotcha.
at first it was just kind of like, we were offering Ruby on Rails training and
Right.
just what was like really popular at the time
Right.
in the startup space. But because we were in Nebraska and there weren't as many startups at the time who could hire on entry-level Ruby developers, we were like, we have to shift gears if this is going to be a sustainable, viable business.
Right.
And so I ended up working with First National Bank was our first partner, largest privately held bank in the United States at the time, and maybe still the case. I just didn't research that before today, but at the time that was the case, and so it was a really big deal that they agreed to partner with this small little company and host .NET developer training.
Right.
That we worked with them to develop the curriculum to make sure that outcomes were what they needed. So we sourced students from the community. FMBO interviewed these candidates,
Gotcha.
selected a few or 10 of them. Our instructor that we outsourced with or hired as a consultant taught the students for 10 weeks,
Right.
and then FMBO hired a subset of that group. So it was a super successful model that we just continued to deliver and improve over time, and eventually sold the company to the AIM Institute.
Gotcha. So, and that to me is a huge story because I think we were, like I said, we first crossed paths when I was just coming on full time at First, or I was at First National.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was
Okay.
there too many years, 18 years actually. So, but I just remember the pivotal move that you had with the code school was really what made MCC, I think, take a second look at how we're delivering IT education training. So, so I think you're being very modest when you talk about that experience and how, how you shape that framework here in education in the state of Nebraska. So,
thank you.
Kudos to you again on that. So, Shonna, tell us again. So with the code school, I mean, you mentioned First National. Were there any other memorable experiences before you moved on to the next phase of your career that you'd like to share?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing was that we kept having companies like believe in what we were doing. So we had BCom Solutions out of Auburn, Nebraska, Flywheel at the time before they were WP Engine. First Data also did a class with us. I hate to leave people out, and I'm sure I am, but a lot of that was through just different partnerships that we established. So I still have a great relationship with Heartland Workforce Solutions, but I'm really all about like finding what resources exist and then like matching them up in ways that haven't been done before. So Heartland Workforce Solutions was a great partner that allowed students who couldn't afford the tuition to have different options to pay for it, to cover it. And then Nebraska Department of Labor had a grant called the Connect Grant at the time.
I remember.
And I remember partnering with them and just saying, what if we come up with a way that's like a pathway into a company through this Connect Grant? So it's not just that the person gets the training, the placement piece is so critical. So just really getting to the point where we would get employer buy-in on the front end was, I think, what really changed.
Yep, and I remember we worked together on that
yeah,
too.
Yes.
Yep. All right, so we're going to do a walk down memory lane. So fast forward a little bit to AIM a little bit, before you got to your current role. Let's talk a little bit about what you did at AIM.
Yeah, so AIM acquired Interface School. And when it's funny because when I was resigning from Interface, I was not thinking that, we were going to sell it because I didn't get that it could be sold, I guess.
Right.
But anyway, when I resigned and then AIM ended up buying the school, even though I was like, cool, I'm out of the operations of Interface game, I still ended up running it for a little bit.
Right.
But it's fine. So yeah, at AIM, I worked on some tech education stuff, led their marketing team for a little bit, led the career link team for a little bit, just did a variety of things there. And then ultimately decided at one point that I was ready to try again to be on my own as an independent consultant. And that lasted for maybe 6 months before Mutual of Omaha reached out.
Gotcha.
And so I ended up consulting there doing like tech community development stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, so fast forward to today. Tell us about Nebraska Tech Collaborative.
Okay, before I do that, I do want to talk a little bit about the Mutual piece because it all kind of like fits together. So when I got to Mutual and Mike Lechtenberger and I and others, he's their CIO and now the executive committee chair for the Nebraska Tech Collaborative. But he and I used to talk about career changers and just different ways to get people into IT.
Sure.
And I've been such a strong proponent of career changers, since 2014, pretty much, because I'm like, if they've got many skills that, younger talent just doesn't have yet because they don't have their time in the workforce.
Right.
It's just different. And so he and I and a group of IT leaders came up with this idea to partner with MCC. And at the time, Skip Pascal had just retired from Mutual and came here to help develop the code school. And so it was just perfect alignment because the tech stack and the training was very well aligned with Mutual.
Right.
So it was a little bit easier for us to say that is not such a huge step from what they're teaching and what we actually need. So that was a great fit. But yeah, we started that internal career changer program at Mutual back in 2018, and it's, from what I know, still going.
Yes.
But with really high retention.
It is.
And that is just the most exciting outcome.
No, it's cool. I mean, and that, you mentioned Skip, and I've, haven't spoken to him in a while, but, that time frame and when Skip came on the Metro was pivotal in our curriculum at Metro. I think we, really were really in tune, or just getting in tune with what employers were looking for.
Yeah.
So your contribution, I don't know if you referenced Skip, or I don't know how Skip and our paths crossed, but I think that's really what, in my opinion, made a huge pivot in what we're doing at MCC today to actually get us on the map, and a huge kudos to Mutual because, Mutual, in my opinion, was the first local major employer that really took a serious look at what we're doing curriculum-wise and giving our students a serious chance, and that has only gotten better to today. So, so your impact on that and Skip's, was huge. So
yeah, for sure. And shout out to Victoria Novak. I know she's not here anymore, but she and I worked at AIM together, and I do believe that most importantly, that relationships matter so much.
They do.
And anyway. Well, I'm
No,
sure
it's
we'll
cool.
get to that.
We will talk about it. Yeah, all right, all right. So yes, Nebraska Tech Collaborative.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you got there, and then I've got more questions, sure.
Yeah, so back in 2018, when the first president was hired to run the NTC, I was very interested in what they were doing and joined their workforce committee. Oh my gosh, what was it called at the time? Let's call it.
Yeah,
I think it was called Workforce and Education, something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so I was on that committee since day one and just have really been interested in what NTC is trying to do. So top 4 goals, one is to add 10,000 tech workers to Nebraska's workforce by 2025, which according to the data we have achieved that number, which is amazing.
Cool.
Increase the percentage of women in tech to 40%. On that item, we've lost ground. So that's an area that we'll really be focusing on in 2024.
Okay.
Increase diversity in tech by up to 20%. So that's underrepresented individuals.
Yep.
And then raise Nebraska's tech profile, which part of the reason why we run the podcast and are very active on social is for that reason.
Gotcha.
And just not saying, look at what the NTC is doing, but look at what's happening in Nebraska.
Gotcha.
So,
very cool.
yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about, from your vantage point and NTC's, let's talk about the landscape of tech in Nebraska. Like you hit some key topics I'm going to elaborate on more, but how do you see NTC like taking a next level down, impacting those goals that you mentioned? So let's talk about women in IT, for example.
Yeah, so that's such a tricky one. And I am really not sure how COVID has impacted things because I know that, there's definitely a crisis in the childcare space. And I want to give a special shout out to Norfolk because they are doing some really innovative things to put like daycares and businesses and just kind of create some different models to support women in the workforce and just parents in general. But let me back up, women in IT.
Yes.
So we're looking at things like supporting, you've got Girls Code Lincoln, Mystery Code Society, organizations like that that are really focused on helping more young women become interested in IT and stay there. And then they're also connecting women who are in IT careers to these opportunities to give back, which is extremely important, adding value. So we'll continue to support those initiatives like that. I think supporting women founders is extremely important too, because if you're a woman in tech and you can work with other women in tech on startups and things like that, that's just interesting.
Right.
It doesn't mean that that's the magical or the silver bullet to solve that, but I just think having those different, like diverse representation and leadership is really key.
Gotcha.
And then also just creating different ways for women in tech to connect to each other. So there's the Women in Tech of the Heartland Group, established, has been around for a really long time. But what I saw in the community, and this is just from conversations I had with diverse women in tech, is that there wasn't really a place for them to connect with each other very easily. Like within a company, there's usually not very many of them in a company. And so there was a group of us at an event that Global Youth Summit, remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So we were sitting around a table and this group of women who work at all the different companies are all women of color were like, usually I'm the only one and that sort of thing. And I asked, is there a group where you all can get together that just represents diverse women in tech? The answer was no. And I was like, cool, let me help with that. That's like one of my, I will call it a superpower of mine is just being able to get things done with partners. I'm not like out here doing everything.
But you get the key to collaboration. It's all about collaboration.
It's so cool. But we found a great venue. These women were really open to serving as panelists, which I love because then you don't have to like prepare anything. Just like, here's the list of questions we'll ask you. But we did all the back end work at the NTC to get everything set up and promoted and set up the meetup page and all these things. And so we held our first event in September. It was well registered, hard to attend. I didn't realize that not everybody wants to go downtown for a meetup in the evening. Lessons learned. But
but the intent as well.
The intent's there. But it was amazing. And as far as the conversations that were had that night and the connections that were made, that's really what it's all about. So we'll continue to do things like that just because I truly believe that creating space for making connections, meaningful connections, and then space for building relationships is how we make Nebraska more appealing to people.
Very cool. Cool. So let's talk about, again, NTC. You mentioned it a little bit, COVID and its impact on the workforce, but remote work and what is NTC's take and your take on what impact is that having across the broader tech community in Nebraska?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. What I would like to see us do more of though is to not discount remote workers, because if you are most of the time, and I don't know how this works with companies that have a remote workforce, if they're like, we're going to get us all together, let's say quarterly, it's probably hard to pull that off on a regular basis. I don't know. But if we make it easier for them to build community while they're here, then great. They're spending their dollars here, so we may as well engage them. And I think that a lot of the meetup groups do a pretty good job of that. But I'm not sure if that was your question.
Yeah, no, I guess more so like, with the initiatives that NTC is setting in place, are you finding it challenging with, local employers maybe, do you find there's a target of more remote workers not in the state of Nebraska, or just curious if that's something you've encountered with your research? Yeah,
I would say like especially with experienced talent like engineers, there is a real shortage here for sure. So that I think that type of skill set definitely lends itself more
to remote.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it's also expensive.
It is, yeah.
So because we're competing with all those coastal companies.
Yes,
So yeah.
And I guess my pointed question is like, again, with your conversations with executives, hiring managers, et cetera, I'm assuming making sure there's an intentional effort to help build these pipelines in the state, and obviously,
Yeah, for sure there's an intentional effort, but I also have to be realistic that a business has a need today.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think it is important to take a long view and say we're going to invest in kids and longer term pathways, even for career changers, to get into, let's say, software engineering specifically, and be super proficient, which takes some time.
It takes years,
Takes years, exactly. That takes time. But then also to understand that the immediate need is I need a cloud engineer with a specific skill set today.
Right. And so I'm going to expand this question because we encounter it here at MCC. So further with that, those conversations with employers, do you challenge them to, you kind of alluded to it earlier with your startup in the code school, do employers seriously take a look at individuals without that formal education and challenging their hiring practices?
Yes, but I would say too that challenge the hiring practice, but also that if they are saying the skill set coming out of our programs is not of the quality it needs to be, then we need to level up seriously. And I think that the collaboration between business and education needs to be tighter, and not one of us saying you're wrong. Because I think both are well-intentioned. I'm just going to use MCC for example. You want to graduate people that go into great jobs and have great careers. A business wants to hire somebody who is like either ready to hit the ground running unicorn person, like just has all the skill sets, all the boxes checked, or somebody that's super close and they can quickly transition in. So both of those things are hard. So I don't know, there's just something there where there's more collaboration required, and then some like real hard conversations need to happen where it's like, okay, you're not you, MCC.
No, I know.
In general,
no, I know.
You're not producing the talent we're looking for. Great. Instead of just discounting an entire type of talent, what would it take for that to work?
No, and I totally agree. And I think I feel like we've been very intentional at MCC in listening because without us listening to our career partners, what's our purpose? Frankly, we're a community college training the workforce, and we can have our ideas about this is what tech professionals need to know, but it's all for naught if we don't listen to the people that are employing students. So I totally get you. I get where you're going with that. So let's talk about further. So Nebraska Tech Collaborative and education collaborations. I know we've got some things going on. Can you share a little bit about those?
Yeah. So back on this career changers thing, I'm always off on oh man, on topics where I may not have a lot of support yet, but I know that I'll get there. It's just going to take time. Easy things I can always do is say we're going to support kids who want to get into tech. Everybody always loves those things. But when we start talking about career changers, that just gets a little bit dicier because the needs are different and all of that. And so one of the projects that is underway for us, will be in 2024, that we started in 23, was to visit with all of the, many, we're not covering all, but many of the non-traditional training providers to understand what the training options are that they have, whether that's 101 up to advanced.
Okay.
And map it out a little bit not a little bit, map it out.
Right.
And then visit with employers about the different pathways.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
if someone goes through a CompTIA help desk, like that sort of path, is there a landing spot for them within companies in Nebraska? If yes, which? And can we create these really clear pathways from like Metro, let's say code black to Metro to insert company with some additional support. So those are things I'm thinking of, and I'm partnering with training providers to work together on it, because a lot of them where the biggest challenge is that placement piece. So
Gotcha.
you know, it's very important.
I like that. So I'm going to shift my questions a little
Okay.
bit. So one of my questions was and is NTC and your influence in the community. So specifically with tech recruiting of underrepresented populations. So you mentioned Code Black, but beyond Code Black, you know, what is NTC's top priorities with making IT more inclusive in the state of Nebraska?
I think the biggest thing is just creating or not creating. We do not like to create, but collaborating with others who are already doing this work. So Code Black is one example, but there are groups that are working to get diverse professionals together, like the Women in Tech group I mentioned, Women of Color in Tech. So anything that we can do to continue to amplify those voices and connect those individuals is key, because then what you can do, I think, is, let's say the Women of Color in Tech group specifically. Now if all of a sudden Metro says, we've got a group of like 20 diverse women who are coming up in our IT programs who want to be connected to mentors. I have a ready pipeline of people who want to actually give back that I can connect them with. And then it starts to become this thing where the students see that representation, which is really key. The individuals who are already in tech careers see opportunities to give back that are very meaningful to individuals who are trying to get into these careers. So those are the types of things I see. And sometimes I think, I'm like, I told somebody the other day, I'm like, I feel like I oversimplify things too much, but I think it's just because I try to avoid complexity as much as possible. And it's like, what's the simplest thing that we can do that will make an impact? See if it works. And if it does, let's scale it and do more of it versus creating these massively complex systems that may or may not achieve the outcomes we're after.
No, I agree. Because collaboration is key. So you got me thinking too. So we're going to talk offline about this. But I'm excited to announce we've created a Nebraska NSBE chapter, National Society of Black Engineers at MCC.
Yay.
So we're super excited. So we'll talk more. We've got some collaboration ideas that we can help promote that particular initiative. So,
excellent.
Gotcha. So back to my other question. So tech, NTC, and education initiatives. I know we're doing some really cool things with MCC and NTC, forgive me. So please elaborate if you could.
Yes. Okay. So Exarban has a scholarship at MCC. It's about $900,000, I want to say, and it's amazing. So we were like, it's been around here for a bit, but we just recently what do you call it? Categorized it, earmarked it, whatever.
Yeah, for IT.
For tech careers, tech training. So we have 137 students enrolled right now, which is outstanding, and exceeded our $300,000 per year goal over the first year. Amazing.
It is.
So with that, the training is one piece of it, but we're like, now let's think about how do we connect these students to more opportunities to meet tech professionals. So I will be talking to you about my groups that I have access to and seeing if there's some pairing up of mentors that we can do there for sure. But inviting tech specific or tech professionals in for panel discussions is critical. Job shadows, connecting them to Intern Nebraska, which I also oversee at this point. So just making sure that they know that there is truly a clear, a pathway, I should say, from Metro to career exploration to internship to full placement in a Nebraska company. So that's what we envision.
Cool. So you're stealing my questions. Intern and E was the next. Please share with the audience and myself, like your role and then NTC's role and what the vision of that initiative is.
So hilariously, I think, when the person who was running Intern Nebraska at Exarban resigned a few months ago, and I visited with Sandra Redding, the president of the Exarban Foundation, and I was like, Sandra, you should let me do this. I was working really closely with the previous executive director because his targets, his goals, or the goals of Intern NE, I should say, are really closely aligned with NTC's goals as we want to add more talent to the workforce pipeline. And a lot of that talent is going to be from internships, et cetera. So great
Gotcha.
alignment,
Yeah,
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
And I'm like, if I take intern NE, it's just a expansion of scope. It's not completely different. It falls right in line.
It complements. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it does. So
that's how I ended up with it.
Yeah. Well, I don't sleep much, and I'm always thinking, Shonna, you're everywhere. You're like, how do you function? I'll talk about that later. But yeah, you're doing so much. But yeah, elaborate a little bit more on the focus of intern NE if you can.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So it's pretty broad. And sometimes I think the reason why I don't talk about them together is because I don't want people to think that intern NE is only for tech internships. Right. It's for all internships. But there is a priority focus on H3, or for those who don't know that acronym, what that stands for, it's high wage, high skill, high demand. So those types of jobs, there's a priority for STEM careers as well. Yep. And mostly because they pay the best, the job opportunities are very interesting and outstanding, and so that makes a lot of sense. There's also a priority to focus on placement in counties outside of Lancaster, Douglas, and Sarpy, only because we have the most people, but we want to make sure that the state is well represented in this effort.
Gotcha.
A little bit of background, Intern Nebraska's been around for a long time, for about 10 years, and this year is the first time that they partnered with an outside entity, and Exarban was selected through an RFP process. And so our role in this is to support employers as they develop internship experiences, which we're calling elevated internship experiences. And that includes everything from making sure that we set up interview days, for example, for candidates and intern Nebraska employers, that once an intern is in a company that they have support for making sure that mentoring relationship is great. So teammates mentoring, and Des Moines Adams, their CEO, and I work very closely together. But one of the things they do, or will be doing with us, is partnering with entities throughout the state. They have regional project coordinators in every community college region in Nebraska. Okay. And so they'll be working with employers in those communities to make sure that those internships are set up properly and the interns have a great experience. Gotcha. And while those interns are in their internships, we'll have peer networking events throughout the state, and we have relationships with several chambers of commerce as well, including the Nebraska State Chamber, Tech Nebraska through that relationship, Greater Omaha Chamber, Lincoln Chamber, and the Norfolk Chamber. Gotcha. So we're working on establishing more of those with chambers of all sizes throughout Nebraska. Gotcha. So,
and for employers that want to learn more about the program, do you want to share a website that they can visit?
Yeah, go to intern. I was like looking at the cameras. InternNEB, Nebraska.org. I was going to say too, the program is interesting because it's a two-part program. So part of it's the grant, $20 million through the state, and then the other part is what Exarban teammates and all of our partners are doing. So on the grant side, though, it's pretty great because historically it was, I believe, limited to wages reimbursement. But now for companies with fewer than 50 employees, it's wages plus tuition and training, housing, transportation, recruitment costs related to bringing in students from out of the state.
Very cool.
For employers with more than 50 or 50 or more, it's everything but wages. So that's pretty great. And the only companies or organizations excluded are educational entities and the government.
Gotcha. So okay. And then, obvious benefits for employers, and then you mentioned earlier students, the internship opportunities and the mentorship are the critical deliverables they'll be able to get from this.
Critical. And then our main goal is to keep the talent here.
For sure.
They graduate, get an internship, stay in Nebraska. Right. Well, different order, but
And so I'll ask you, I did ask you this offline, but for the audience, high school students, we work quite a bit with high school students. One of the big questions I get is, help us find an internship as a high school student. Yes. How does this program impact, or what scope will that have?
It does support high school students. 11th and 12th graders are eligible. Right. Okay. But I think one of the things when I've talked to high school students recently about this, and I think that it's just trickier because again, it comes down to experience. Yes. And since they'll lack that, the more they can do to develop their teamwork, collaboration skills, communication skills are just so critical. The more we can do looking at these cameras, parents, teachers, all of us to help these students be more resilient too, things aren't always going to go well. You don't get a gold star for showing up. You have to do the work. So just really imparting that on these kids is going to be really key.
Gotcha. Making sure they're ready. So when the opportunities come, the things we can do in the educational system, but it's a village, right?
It is, for sure.
Gotcha. Cool. Shonna, tell us about your outlook and maybe NTCs as a whole on, you know, the horizon of tech in Nebraska. Like, tell us what looks good, you know, what should people be thinking about if they're remotely thinking about getting into the tech space in Nebraska?
I think one of the coolest things we have going on right now is the growth of our startup ecosystem. Okay. So it's really incredible to see, and just like all the different types of companies that are standing up and being successful longer term is really cool. And one of the most interesting things I've noticed is a lot of companies have spun out of Flywheel. Have you noticed that? Like Workshop and Alpaca, there's many who've spun out of Flywheel and are successful.
Really cool.
So I think that says a lot about the importance, or that how that culture was.
For sure.
You know, because they're spinning out companies. But anyway, that's very exciting, and I think that will make our the opportunities more abundant. The economy is slowing down, that's for sure. But one thing that I am proud of as a Nebraskan, and I know I left and came back, so as a boomerang,
but
how
you're
about
here, that? You're back. That's the main thing. Yeah, for sure.
Is that while we have had some layoff events, they're not as prevalent as you see in other communities, because we're, I think, pretty conservative about overhiring for the most part, so that we don't have to have those very disruptive events take place here. But even when they do, I think this community is so supportive when it comes to your next landing spot. But to employees, I will say that it is very important that you, don't burn bridges, work hard, all the things, because your relationships really impact what happens next. And, you know,
because I mean, you've probably heard it. Omaha is the biggest little town.
Biggest little town. What are we, like half degree separation at this point?
Seems like everyone knows everyone. I know. I totally agree. So, so back a little bit to similar question: tech awareness, getting people in this space. You know, can you highlight some additional things NTC has on the horizon or that you're doing now? You mentioned several community groups, but what specific initiatives can you elaborate on more?
Yeah, we don't really start up a lot of things, and people might wonder why that is. And the reason, from my perspective, is that there are just a lot of great things already happening. So you've got like Prairie STEM, the Omaha STEM ecosystem they're doing a good job of just like having a resource where people can go to one place to see what's available. But I think the more of that we can do, so that people don't feel so like disconnected from what's happening, the better. I would also say, this is just a side note thought of mine, but I have found that the most networked kids, the kids with the most social capital do the best.
They do,
And so the more that we can help create those networks for people, the better. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay.
It all goes back to networking.
No, it does. It really does. Who you know and who knows you. I totally agree. Let's see. So real specific, I kind of rehashed some of these questions, but again, from your vantage point, NTC, your conversations, someone thinking of getting into this space, what does if there were maybe one or two tech area focus roles that you might tell someone to consider? Do you have some thoughts for the audience you could share?
Yes, and you're saying like tech, like demand.
Yes.
Software engineering.
Yeah, for sure.
Number one,
okay.
Hardest, longest to get into.
For sure.
The hardest to get into like the senior engineer role.
Right.
But it's hard to say, because right now is like the worst time to be asking that question, in my opinion, just because things have slowed down quite a bit. But where employers are still really hiring as engineers, but we're talking experience, right?
And
so
that's the
it's
catch-22.
Right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I know. But we, and I think it, in my opinion, I'm passionate about pipeline building.
Yes.
And, I do totally get the need of employers. They have an immediate need now, but it's only going to get worse if we don't address that. Like elephant in the room, there needs to be a pipeline to fulfill those needs. So So
it's worth though thinking through like what's another way we can get there. So it's not maybe going to be like I graduate from a program, I go right into an engineering job. That's not how it goes. But maybe it is something like I graduate from a program, I go into some sort of incubator of some sort where I can build my skill set in a safer space where the risk is not so high that if I mess up too much, I'll lose my job.
It's true.
But where I can work on real technology, real problems, and build my skill set. And then transition from that into a larger company.
Right. And I totally get that. I'm just I keep going back to do you have thoughts, I guess, on how to create that safe space? Yeah. So help me. I know you do. Yep.
What if MCC stood up like a incubator is not the best word, but you know what I mean, like somewhere where it's like you graduated from school, it doesn't matter what school you went to. We're going to assess you, see where you're at. You come into this MCC program, kind of like the culinary school. You guys have a restaurant in there.
We do.
So it would be like the same as having like a
very
something
interesting.
Like that.
Okay.
Then,
go ahead.
If it's like a what do you call those places? Goodness. You know, you have these consulting companies.
Yeah.
And they charge a fee to hire people.
Okay. I'm going to be sharing this with my superiors. They're going to be listening, so we will talk about this. I like what you're thinking. I like it. Good idea. All right. Okay. So, I feel like I'm getting to the end of my questions and my scary points. So I got a few more. Let me see. I got a couple more. Let's see. So, Shonna, tell us. I kind of alluded to it. So one of my challenges is work-life balance.
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you do to help keep some separation in your work life?
I believe no is a complete sentence.
Okay. All right.
That's really it.
That's cool. Okay. I need to learn that.
Yeah, no, for real. It's big, but yeah, I try to limit right now, I don't know when this will air, but it's like gala season right now. And they're just all the time. But events like that, I'm like, I will just do 1 or 2 a week at most, and that's it. Even if something else super cool comes up, I'm just like, well, I guess I missed out this year. I need to plan better next time.
Okay.
But I really just keep evenings free.
Okay.
So that's
I
one of my strategies.
Take that advice. Okay. Someone wanting to get into the space, definitely some economic ebbs and flows right now, as you kind of alluded to. Would you still, I'm assuming, recommend tech as a good career sector for sure?
It's outstanding.
Yeah. And what are, maybe, so high school students, career changers, just seasoned adults that are looking, for those 3 demographic groups, any general thoughts you can share, like someone wanting to get into this space? And
yeah, so let's just say this person wants to get in the space and they live in Greater Omaha. They should visit techomaha.com regularly. That site has meetup events happening all over the city and different networking opportunities. Because I think one of the best ways to get connected is to just be around tech people.
Gotcha.
Not as easy to walk into a company and talk to developers, but you can go to a meetup and meet a bunch of people that are in this space. So I would 100% do that.
Okay.
Side projects are super helpful. So even if you don't have a customer, you could build something that's based off of an existing platform. So build like an Amazon Lite and just show that you can do end-to-end development. That's pretty great. And use that to build your portfolio if that's of interest.
Okay.
But yeah, those are just 2 easy things off the top of my head.
Gotcha.
Not easy, but things to do.
And we have some tools here at MCC, but another common question I get is, I think I want to be in tech. I don't know where to start. And I'm curious from your vantage point. I'm sure you get those questions all the time.
Yeah.
What do you tell?
My top 2 is AIM, because they've got their demystifying IT program. Omaha STEM ecosystem, lots of great resources, and eventually, I think can become the hub of that sort of information.
Okay, very cool, very cool. All right, so I've had you on the hot seat. Yeah, so I'm reluctant. What questions do you have of me that I can answer, regarding what we're doing at MCC, or just, me personally, or whatever? What do you want to, so it's not a one-sided conversation.
I like talking, so this is great.
Yeah.
But what is MCC doing to partner closely with diverse groups that are working to support helping diverse individuals get into tech?
Yes. So, the one that comes to mind, Code Black, David Pollock, doing an excellent job. We've been partnering with them on several initiatives on our non-credit side. And then recently, he and I are having conversations about some pathways from his software testing emerging program that we're working on, and how that feeds into our credit pathway. So super excited about that. We have some news coming soon on that. So that's one, I think the biggest example I can share right now, that Code Black is one of our top areas that we're focusing on, trying to make a pathway from, non-traditional credit to our credit pathways. So
I love that. What other questions do I have for you? Have you ever been to karaoke?
No.
You
you know, I'm an introvert, so I'm not really.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
but you're
okay.
telling me I should go, huh?
Yeah, it's fun. It's a
Okay.
good time.
All right.
It's
All
a
right.
totally random question.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of what else to ask you because I feel like even though you said this has been one-sided, your questions are showing me what you're
Okay.
interested in and trying to get done here
Okay.
at MCC.
Yeah.
And I know that y'all are just really a great partner. And I often think about my time at Mutual and how receptive y'all are to curriculum input and things like that. And, you know,
No,
it's just really important.
Yeah,
So
I guess, and I've said it, I'll reiterate it. It's, frankly, what is our purpose as a community college? It's, education to employment as I see it. I believe that our mission statement includes those, objectives. So it's really simple to me, what can we do without our community partners? What's our purpose is my simple answer to that. So,
I love that.
so yeah, can't say enough about Mutual. This is not a Mutual commercial, but, they've been a great champion of what we're doing, and just got an email yesterday from one of the recruiters that they hired a few of our students. So super happy about that. So we're, I think we're listening to what employers are saying is critical, and again, it's like without that, what are we here for? So so pretty simple, yeah.
What questions would you like me to ask you?
Nothing. Because I'm bracing, because I'm good if you're good. No, this has been cool, Shonna. I appreciate your time. I know you're a super busy person. You're focused, and I appreciate all you do in the community. It's been cool getting to know you over the past few years, and I feel like I've grown. I've seen how you've grown into the person you are today, so it's cool seeing that. So
thank you.
Cool.
Oh, I did have one question.
Okay.
It's not hot seat. It's
Okay.
like
All right.
warm seat.
Okay.
But what do you guys do a lot with like justice impacted individuals as far as like the training, but then like support on the placement side?
We do. So we have a very active reentry program. It's actually growing, and we have a couple faculty that teach in the Omaha Correctional Center.
Oh, cool.
We're expanding the program to Tecumseh. I want to get the name correct. Tecumseh State Correctional. I'm probably missing the name, but yes, we are expanding just this coming winter quarter. And our reentry program, Diane Good Collins, Glenn Flanorel, Rodney Evans Diane's our program director. Glenn and Rodney are the instructors in both facilities. So so once individuals enter the reentry process, they get we've got kind of a boot camp of courses, intro to IT, some basic word processing, some intro to networking for starters, and then intro to programming, and then they go through Diane's program reentry to help bridge that pathway from, correctional facility to mainstream reentry in society. So it's growing, yes, and so we're doing a lot of stuff in that space.
That's great. What are you seeing as far as like employer buy-in?
Yeah,
there?
it's
Is that growing or?
It's growing. I'll definitely connect you with Diane. She's kind of more on the ground. I know we have heard some success stories. I think she would definitely be a better resource. I don't want to overstate it, but I know the accounts I get from Diane that we've had some successes, and we definitely hire students here at Metro and other partners in the community. So I feel like it's growing, and I've heard of success. There's some testimonials that I'll share with you too. So
cool.
Yeah, very cool.
All
right. So I'm off the hot seat.
That's
cool?
it.
All right,
that was
cool.
easy.
Again, thanks for your time, Shonna, as
you
always,
bet.
and we'll see you in the near future. So
See you soon.
cool. Thank you.